Dearest Razan, thank you for joining me today to talk about your immensely important work as President of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, your other work in biodiversity protection and conservation in the UAE and globally, and your related journey with philanthropy. Razan Al Mubarak, my partner in life and in philanthropy, is a dedicated leader in global efforts to protect and conserve nature and to mitigate the impacts of climate change on the environment. She was elected president of the IUCN in September 2021, the second woman to hold this post in the organization's 75-year history, and its first president from West Asia. A mother of two wonderful girls, she also currently serves as the UN Climate Change High-Level Champion for COP28 UAE. For more than 2 decades, Razan has played a vital role in the UAE, witnessing our nation's incredible journey towards a more sustainable future while spearheading progressive environmental protection, species conservation, and climate action across West Asia and globally. When she was appointed Managing Director of the Environment Agency in Abu Dhabi in 2010, Razan became the youngest person to lead an Abu Dhabi government entity. Razan is also the founding director of the Mohammed bin Zayed Species Conservation Fund, helping to build the organization into one of the world's largest philanthropic foundations, supporting direct species conservation. She began her career in conservation in 2001 when she helped establish Emirates Nature, an NGO associated with the World Wildlife Fund. She currently chairs the board for the International Center for Biosaline Agriculture and is a board member for numerous environmental influential entities and stakeholders, including Masdar, the world's largest renewable energy investor based in Abu Dhabi. Internationally, she's an advisory board member of the Rockefeller Foundation's Economic Council on Planetary Health, the Cambridge Conservation Initiative, and the Emirates Diplomatic Academy, and is a board member of Pantera and the Women in Sustainability, Environment, and Renewable Energy Initiative. In 2019, Razan and I joined the Giving Pledge, and we share a commitment to help catalyze systemic change within the philanthropic sector in the hope that we can help accelerate the growth of transformative partnerships and supportive networks in this space. Dear Razan, the IUCN is a membership organization composed of over 1,400 NGOs and 160 countries, helping to set conservation priorities worldwide. Could you start by telling us a bit more about the Union, its philosophy, and the thing or things that it's most focused on today?
First of all, thank you. Thank you, Badr, for having me on your incredible podcast and business and philanthropy series that I listen to, not just because I'm your wife, but I also listen to because I really do believe in the integral role of this sector to address some of the most complex challenges that we collectively face. So I'm also going to start with a bit of a promise. In the construct of climate change and biodiversity conservation, we tend to speak in acronyms. So I will not speak in acronyms. Let's have hopefully a wonderful discussion and a dialogue that your readers, your listeners would, I hope, enjoy. So let's start with the first acronym that you use and let's dispel the noise around it. So what is IUCN? IUCN stands for the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. And in essence, it is the largest environmental network on the planet. And the philosophy of this organization that was established 75 years ago was really to challenge the construct of multilateralism, because it's the only network, it's the only platform that has membership from both government institutions, so state actors, as well as non-state actors, civil society, working in the field of nature and environmental conservation. It is also the only platform that also both individual membership. So it also has 15,000 scientists, again, working in the field of conservation. So it's such a unique platform. And this uniqueness gives us the opportunity to be the only permanent observer at the United Nations. And why is this important? Because it's this congruence of this diverse actors. We sit together, we work out really two important items on this sort of global agenda. The first one is to define what the environmental nature agenda is, so that countries, civil society work together towards. But it also uses its very sort of diverse scientific backbone, its 15,000 scientists, to establish the tools and the standards so that we can all work against very similar benchmarks and very similar, again, standards and ability to monitor what we're doing.
Thank you so much for that. At the recent COP28 UAE, you announced initial commitments of over $1 billion, I believe, to support nature climate projects, including the UAE's strategic $100 million investment with a focus on the world's largest forest basins across South America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. You described this as a turning point where we collectively recognize the indispensable contribution of nature, not only to our climate systems, but also to its profound, intangible value to our communities and cultures. Could you tell us what your hopes are for a greater commitment from philanthropy to nature climate projects?
Yeah, I mean, for me, COP28 was a turning point, not only because I never thought one could work so hard, but it was a turning point because for the first time, the global community not only heeded to science with respect to coming together to agree to phase out fossil fuels in a just and orderly manner, but it was also just as clear with respect to the place of nature within the construct of climate change. There was an admission and a realization that, in fact, we cannot reach the goals of Paris. We will not be able to implement the UAE consensus that arrives from COP28 without nature. For the first time ever, there was a global agreement, for example, to end deforestation by 2030. So for me, COP28 was not merely another conference, a climate change conference. It was a beacon of hope. It was a call to action. And it was, again, a recognition that climate and nature cannot be dealt with separately any longer. So in terms of what would I hope that the community, including business and philanthropy, do? I'm hoping for essentially three things. First of all, we really need to be able to leverage nature-based solutions. And I'm also proud to say that as president of IUCN, IUCN defined what nature-based solutions are. And essentially, they are solutions that leverage the power of nature to deliver on three key solutions: to deliver on climate mitigation and adaptation. They need to deliver on biodiversity conservation and restoration, and most crucially, to benefit people and to benefit people and communities. So nature-based solutions are a win-win-win and a powerful ally to combat climate change, and they can deliver up to 30% of our climate mitigation requirements by 2030. So my hopes are we need to scale up nature-based solutions because by enhancing our climate action, we need to stop commodity-driven deforestation. That's my third one. Actually, maybe four. We need to also, as I said earlier in my answer to your question about COP28, because we need to be phasing out fossil fuels, we need to be able to triple our renewable energy sources. So it's really important in the context of nature that in our pace, and we need to triple our renewable energy sources by 2030, that it doesn't come at the expense of nature. So that is really important. And then finally, we need the community also to recognize that nature-based solutions are not a one-size-fits-all, that nature-based solutions are very contextualized, they're very nuanced to a particular locale and space. And if we do not amply engage with the local communities and indigenous peoples, the custodians really of nature and nature-based solutions, we will be failing those that we are trying to serve. So engagement at the local community is extremely important.
Absolutely. And it was, of course, great to see, to a large extent, thanks to your engagement and involvement in everything, or a lot of what you've just talked about, really front and center of the action agenda at COP28. And one just hopes that that continues across, not just throughout the year, but obviously into future presidencies. So I did mention that you're the founding director of the Mohammed bin Zayed Species Conservation Fund, which since inception has amazingly supported more than 2,000, I believe, species conservation projects in over 160 countries, bringing many species back from the brink of extinction. How do you measure the impact of the fund over time, and what does expansion look like for the fund going forward?
So we can measure impacts both tangibly and intangibly. And tangibly, as you've stated, we can measure them by the number of species that were brought back from the brink of extinction, or the number of species that were rediscovered. And we have over 2,000, as you said, 2,750 species conservation projects, each with their own measurable key performance indicators. So we know how these projects are doing and are impacting nature and species from a sort of tangible perspective. But the intangible perspective is, I believe, just as powerful. And this is really where I believe philanthropy need to be potentially even more curious, because that's what philanthropy can do that other investors may be less interested in. And so the intangible bit about the things that we do is, when we conceived the foundation, it was just about people as it was about nature and the species that they conserve. And let me warrant the statement. We felt, and the founder, His Highness, the President of the United Arab Emirates, found that not only were we at a point where we were challenged by the species extinction conundrum, but we also saw that the conservationists themselves, the discipline of conservation, if it was not supported, leveraged, highlighted, then it would also go extinct. And it needed the ongoing support of this particular discipline, because it is an art and it is a passion and it is indispensable. You can't protect nature with funding alone. You have to protect it by really empowering those individuals that protect nature.
Do you see an opportunity for cross-sector collaboration in this area of nature conservation? And can philanthropy promote faster action by all stakeholders, including business and government, on the race to reach 30 by 30, which of course is the conservation of at least 30% of the world's land, freshwater, and marine ecosystems by 2030?
I mean, you've always taught me that the real magic happens is at the nexus of things and the nexus of disciplines. And we talk about the existential crises of climate change, of biodiversity loss, of course, of all the sustainable development challenges that we all must overcome. And we won't be able to address them in isolation. First as topics, but also in terms of tools. For far too long, we've been, again, working in isolation. We have the scientists working alone, the policymakers, the technologists, the investors, and the finance. And we must be able to break these barriers, because these solutions will require different tools and will require for us to actually recognize that they are all linked. If we don't address the issue of social and economic justice, we will not address the issue of nature conservation. And so that recognition and breaking those barriers are extremely important. The other thing is that it's no longer a nice thing to do. It's a must. It's a must do. We cannot also just depend on, okay, let's connect the dots, but truly converge those issues and address them together. And that's why, again, I'm extremely proud of what the COP28 was able to accomplish. Because again, for the first time, it called for the convergence of the Rio Conventions. So the Rio Conventions are Convention on Biodiversity, Convention on Climate Change, and Convention on Desertification, because of that very acknowledgement that we must be able and must address these complex issues together and not in isolation.
So I have a final question, if I may. You've said that the more women and girls are included in efforts to tackle climate change and advance sustainable development, the faster we move towards a healthier, safer, and more equitable society for all. Yet women and girls continue to suffer some of the worst consequences of climate change, and data shows they're not sufficiently included in climate and nature solutions. So how can philanthropy, in your view, catalyze more collaborations, again, with governments and businesses to address this need to bring about a more inclusive and gender-just transition?
So, I mean, let's get something straight. Climate change is here. Global warming is happening, and it's not something that we have the luxury to worry about in the future. It is already disproportionately affecting the most vulnerable. And unfortunately, that vulnerability is very much, is not, again, gender neutral. So as you said, women and girls are facing the crux of the climate and biodiversity loss. And so with that recognition, we also have to also recognize that we cannot talk about a just transition that leaves women behind. And so what do we need? In my view, we need potentially investment and a closer look at within three key areas. The first area is data. We cannot have a just energy transition or a transition towards a more equitable world without really understanding how that impacts women and how women are accounted for from a contribution perspective. So today, that does not really and authentically exist. So we need to be able to design gender-responsive climate policies. To do that, we must have gender disaggregated data to fully understand the impact on women and children and girls, and as I said, to account for the contribution of women and girls. And when we fully understand that, we are able to then better support women and girls with respect to policies, with respect to support, but also in terms of financing. So financing is the second bit. We always say that, ideas, plans without finance are hallucinations. And so we need to be able to support the women and girls that are really at the front line of climate impacts and are ready with the solution, but need the support. And the third element is really genuine empowerment and engagement. I'm not talking about here with ensuring that women sit on, make sure that there are women sitting on panels, but women and girls need to co-design the solutions that we require to achieve a genuinely just transition.
Razan, I love you and deeply appreciate you taking the time to do this session away from your many official and non-official responsibilities, including looking after me and our children. Thank you again.
Thank you.